The silent tide. The year was 2028, and the world had grown complacent. After the COVID-19 pandemic, humanity believed it was prepared for anything. Vaccines had been developed at record speed, emergency protocols were in place, and health officials assured the public that no new virus could take them by surprise again. But then it came. The first reports were dismissed as routine. A small cluster of people in a rural town in Eastern Europe complained of fever, fatigue, and mild respiratory symptoms. A new strain of the flu experts said, "Nothing to worry about." Yet within days the symptoms took a darker turn. Victims began experiencing uncontrollable seizures, their eyes rolling back into their skulls as blood seeped from their noses and mouths. Then came the silence. Day 1, the whisper. Dr. Elena Markov, an epidemiologist with the World Health Organization, was the first to raise the alarm. She was stationed in Romania when the reports reached her desk. Photos accompanied the data, faces frozen in terror, bloodied hospital sheets, bodies piled in morgues. Elena felt a familiar chill crawl up her spine, a sensation she hadn't experienced since 2020. "This isn't normal," she murmured to herself. When she visited the outbreak site, the small village of Rostov, the streets were empty. Doors hung ajar, livestock wandered aimlessly, and a stench of decay lingered in the air. Elena entered a clinic, her heart pounding. Inside, the floors were sticky with dried blood, and the only sound was the hum of a broken light. The virus had claimed its first town. Day 3, the spread. By the time the global community noticed, it was too late. The virus, quickly named H2N7Z, spread faster than anyone could comprehend. It wasn't airborne, not yet, but it thrived on touch. Crowded markets, public transport, and even handshakes turned into death traps. People began disappearing. First, it was the elderly and those with weak immune systems, just like COVID-19. But within a week, healthy young adults and even children started collapsing. Their bodies were found curled into grotesque positions, their faces locked in expressions of agony. Panic set in. News anchors warned people to stay indoors. Social media flooded with videos of people collapsing in public, their eyes wide with fear as they clawed at their throats. "It's worse than COVID," they wrote. "It's coming for all of us." Day 7, the mutation. In a hidden lab outside Geneva, scientists worked around the clock. Elena was among them, her hands trembling as she analyzed blood samples. The virus was unlike anything she'd seen before. It wasn't just targeting the lungs or the immune system, it was hijacking the nervous system, turning the body against itself. "We're looking at a 90% fatality rate," a colleague whispered, his voice hollow. Elena's heart sank. COVID had been devastating, but it had left most people alive. H2N7Z didn't spare anyone. Worse, the virus seemed to be adapting, finding new ways to spread. Rats and birds began acting strangely, twitching violently before dying. Soon they became carriers, spreading the virus faster than human contact ever could. Day 10, the collapse. Cities became ghost towns. Governments imposed strict lockdowns, but it didn't matter. Entire neighborhoods vanished overnight, their occupants succumbing to the virus or fleeing in blind terror. Food and water supplies dwindled as factories shut down. The internet buzzed with conspiracy theories. It's a bioweapon, some claimed. The apocalypse is here, others insisted. Elena knew the truth was simpler. Humanity had underestimated nature once again, and now it was paying the price. Day 15, the plague of fear. In London, a man sat alone in his apartment, the lights flickering as his generator sputtered. Outside, the city was silent except for the occasional scream. He clutched a knife, though he didn't know why. There was no one left to rob him. Elsewhere, a mother cradled her feverish child, tears streaming down her face as she sang a lullaby. The child's breathing grew shallower until it stopped altogether. She didn't scream, she had no energy left. Elena, now stationed in Berlin, received a grim update: the virus had gone airborne. Masks were useless. The virus was too small, slipping through filters and riding on the wind. "Is there any hope?" a young intern asked her one evening, his voice quivering. Elena didn't answer. She didn't have to. Day 20, the end begins. The world's power grids failed as workers abandoned their posts. Hospitals became morgues, their halls echoing with the groans of the dying. Governments dissolved, their leaders retreating into bunkers or succumbing to the plague themselves. Elena, now one of the few survivors in her lab, sat alone in front of a microscope. Her skin was pale, her cheeks sunken. She hadn't eaten in days, and her cough worsened by the hour. But she worked on, driven by the faint hope of finding a cure. As she peered into the microscope, her vision blurred. The virus was changing again, its spindly form growing spikes that shimmered with an unnatural glow. She blinked, realizing with horror that her hands were shaking not from exhaustion, but from the fever now burning through her own body. Epilogue: the silent tide. Weeks passed, and the earth grew still. Forests crept into empty streets, animals roamed free, and the skies cleared of smog for the first time in decades. The virus, having consumed its hosts, finally burned itself out. Somewhere in a crumbling lab, Elena's notes lay scattered across a desk. Among them was a single line scrawled in shaky handwriting: "Nature always wins." I'm not sure what's going on, and I feel like I'm losing my grip on things. I'm a principal at a small elementary school in a quiet, suburban town. Recently, something strange has been happening with a few of my students, and it's got me a little unnerved. I'm hoping someone here can shed some light on it, because honestly, I'm not sure what to make of it anymore. Over the past month or so, I've had multiple kids come into my office, each with a similar story. Something about a man in the woods behind the school. At first, I figured it was just kids being kids, coming up with stories to get attention or something like that. But the more I heard it, the more it started to feel strange. Here's what the kids have been telling me. They say there's a man who lives in the woods just behind the school. He's always whistling a tune, a soft, eerie sound that seems to carry through the trees. And some of them have heard the whistling on their way home. Others have said they've seen the man in the distance, standing still between the trees, watching them. But it's the details that are starting to get to me. The kids aren't just describing the man in vague terms. Some of them describe things I hate to imagine on or near school property, or to any of my students outside of school. One child even mentioned that the man always says, "Come closer, I won't hurt you." I've talked to the parents about it, but they seem just as puzzled. One mother even mentioned that her child, one of the higher achieving ones, Evan, has been acting unusually paranoid, afraid to walk anywhere near the woods. His parents were convinced something happened to him, but when I pressed him about it, he just said he'd had a nightmare about the man. I chalked it up to an overactive imagination, but the more kids come to me with similar stories, the harder it is to ignore. I went into the woods myself after school one day to make sure nothing was going on. I figured if there was anyone out there, I'd put an end to it and just tell them to stay away from the school grounds and keep their distance from the kids. I walked into the woods for a good while. I didn't hear anything unusual, no whistling, no movement. I made sure to take a good look around, even went as far as the old boundary fence, and there was nothing, no sign of anyone. But then, just as I was turning to head back, I heard it. A faint whistle, barely audible over the rustling of the trees. I figured it was just the wind at first, but it wasn't. It was too deliberate, too rhythmic. It stopped just as suddenly as it started. I was already out of the woods and back to my car by then, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I know it sounds crazy, I know. But after everything the kids have been saying, and now this strange sound in the woods, I can't help but wonder if something is going on that I'm missing. Anyway, I'm just reaching out to see if anyone here has ever heard of anything like this before. Is it just kids with wild imaginations? Or is there something more to this than I'm understanding? Should I be concerned? Thanks in advance for any help. They always tell you to appreciate the little things in life. I used to laugh at that. Little things? Like what? Homework? Like walking to school with the same boring streets? It all felt so routine until the day it wasn't. It started like any other morning. My best friend Mia and I were walking to school. The air was crisp, the kind that makes your breath visible. We had just passed the old oak tree near the park when we noticed it. The fog. It wasn't normal fog, not the kind you see after a cold night. It was thick, almost alive, crawling in from every direction. The streetlights barely pierced through, casting weak halos that seemed to vanish if you stared too long. Mia stopped walking and grabbed my arm. "Do you see that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, "Yeah, but why is it so quiet?" Usually our street buzzed with life, barking dogs, cars humming, kids chattering, but now, nothing, not even birds. The silence was so heavy it pressed against my ears. We hurried to school, our sneakers slapping against the pavement. The closer we got, the thicker the fog grew. By the time we reached the schoolyard, we couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Shadows danced in the mist, but when we turned to look, there was nothing there. The bell didn't ring, there were no teachers to greet us, the halls were eerily empty. Mia and I exchanged a glance, both thinking the same thing. Something was wrong. Then we heard it. A scraping sound, like nails dragging against metal, echoing down the hallway. Slow, deliberate. Mia's grip on my arm tightened. "What is that?" she hissed. I don't know," I stammered, my voice barely audible. We crept forward, the sound growing louder with every step. Turning the corner, we froze. At the far end of the hall was it. It wasn't human, at least not anymore. It had long, spindly limbs that bent at unnatural angles, and its skin was stretched too tightly over its bones, like it didn't fit. Its head twitched in quick, jerky movements, and its eyes, they glowed faintly like two dying embers. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It raised one of its twisted hands and scratched the wall again, that horrible screech cutting through the silence. Mia pulled me back, her eyes wide with terror. "Run," she mouthed. We sprinted, our footsteps echoing like gunshots in the empty school. The fog seeped through the cracks in the windows, swirling around us like it was alive. I could feel it in my lungs, cold and heavy, like breathing smoke. We burst into the gym, slamming the door behind us. For a moment, all we could hear was the sound of our ragged breathing. Did it follow us?" Mia asked, her voice barely more than a whimper. Before I could answer, the lights flickered, then went out. And then the scratching started again. This time it was closer. I backed up until I hit the bleachers. The air felt colder, the fog denser. Mia clutched my hand, and I could feel her shaking. "Where's everyone else?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, tears stinging my eyes. The scratching stopped. Silence. But it wasn't comforting. It was the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. The kind that warned you something was coming. Suddenly a guttural growl echoed through the gym, low and rumbling, like it came from deep within the fog. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it watching us. And then it spoke. Not in words, not exactly. It was more like a feeling, a deep, primal dread that slithered into my mind. "You shouldn't be here." The gym doors creaked open, the fog pouring in like a wave, and there it was, its glowing eyes fixed on us, unblinking. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It stepped closer, its joints cracking with every movement. I grabbed Mia's hand and ran, but the fog was everywhere, swallowing the room, swallowing us. I don't know how long we ran or if we ever really escaped. All I know is that when I woke up, the world outside my window wasn't the same. The fog is still here, and so is it. Every night, I hear the scratching at my door. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. Every time I close my eyes, I see those glowing embers staring back at me. It's not just the scratching anymore. Last night, I heard it whisper. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks, but the voice was clear, dripping with malice. It said my name, not once, not twice, but over and over like a chant. Ellie? Ellie? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just curled under my blanket, hoping it would go away. But it didn't. The whispering turned into growling, low and guttural, vibrating in my chest. I could feel it in the walls, in the floor, in my bones. And then the scratching started again, louder this time, sharper, like it was carving its way through the wood. When I finally built up the courage to look, the door wasn't scratched. It was splintered. Deep grooves dug into it like claws had raked across. Mia stopped answering my texts. She hasn't been to school, and when I walked to her house this morning, no one was there. The door was wide open, her front yard swallowed by that same thick fog. I wanted to call out for her, but something told me not to. The air felt heavier, colder. I couldn't step inside. Instead, I turned and ran. But when I got back home, I saw the marks. They were on my walls now, streaking across the hallway like it had been inside. My hands trembled as I opened my bedroom door, and for a moment I thought I was safe. Nothing was out of place. But then I saw the window. The fog had risen higher, pressing against the glass like it was alive. And scrawled across the pane in dripping, blackened streaks was one word. I shut the curtains and locked myself in, but I know it won't matter. Whatever this thing is, it's not something locks can keep out. I tried to call my mom, but her phone went straight to voicemail. She should have been home hours ago, but 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐞. I don't know where Mia is. I don't know if she's still alive. The whispers came again tonight, louder this time, echoing through the house. But they weren't alone. Something's moving in the fog now. I can see it through the cracks in the curtains. A shadow, too tall, too thin, with limbs that bend and snap like broken twigs. It's pacing outside my window, dragging those claws against the siding. I don't know what it wants. No, that's a lie. I think I do. It's hungry. It's hunting. And I think I'm next. If someone finds this, please, don't look for me. Don't come here. The fog isn't just outside anymore. It's inside me. Filling my lungs. Crawling under my skin. I can hear it now, scratching at my bedroom door. It knows I'm here, and it's not gonna stop. I'm running out of time? The scratching at the door is relentless, a steady rhythm that's driving me to the edge. Each clawed stroke sends a shiver down my spine, making me feel like the walls are closing in. The fog is creeping through the cracks, pale tendrils slipping under the door, curling into the room like fingers reaching for me. I've barricaded myself with whatever I could find, my dresser, my desk, even the bed, but I know it's useless. This thing doesn't care about locks or walls. It's playing with me, taking its time. I thought about making a run for it, but where would I go? The streets outside are an endless void, swallowed whole by the fog. Even if I escaped, I'd only be running blind. Mia tried that, didn't she? I can still hear her voice in my head, calling out to me when we were in the school. Ellie, don't stop, keep going. I didn't stop, but now I wonder if I should have. Maybe if I'd stayed, if I'd faced it, this wouldn't be happening. No, that's a lie. I don't think there's a way to stop this. I tried calling for help again. I don't even know why. Every number I dial goes nowhere, just static, like the lines are dead. Even the internet's gone. My phone's showing no service, no matter where I stand. I'm completely alone. Or maybe I'm not. Just a few minutes ago I heard something new. Not scratching, not whispers, but footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming up the stairs. They stopped right outside my door. And then I heard breathing. Slow, wet, and ragged, like whoever or whatever it is has lungs full of water. I don't think it's human. I've been staring at the door, waiting for it to break through. My heart's pounding so hard it feels like it might burst. Every second stretches on forever. And then, just now, it stopped. The breathing, the scratching, all of it. It's quiet again. Too quiet. I want to believe it's gone, but I can't shake the feeling that it's still here, just waiting for me to let my guard down. I'm writing this as fast as I can, just in case. If anyone finds this, if anyone's still out there, you need to know what's happening. The fog isn't natural, but it's alive. It moves, it breathes, and it brings whatever they are. I think they're taking us. Mia, my mom, everyone, and now me. The fog is thicker than ever now, swirling through the room like smoke. It's cold against my skin, seeping into my clothes, my hair, my lungs. It's making it harder to breathe, harder to think. I can feel it wrapping around me, pulling me under. The door just creaked. It's here. I don't want to look, but I can't stop myself. It's watching me. The glowing eyes, the twisted limbs. It's closer now. So close I can hear its bones creak with every movement. It's smiling. God, it's smiling. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. Don't let the fog take you. Don't listen to the whispers. And whatever you do, don't look at the eyes.